Hi guys, I'm back again today with another Buy Me a Coffee request. This is Two Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2. And before we do start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and thank you for the request. If you want to have a priority request, check Buy Me a Coffee. And yeah, let's go straight into the video.
Welcome, Rangers! Perhaps you're wondering where you
I hope my internet is okay. It's kind of sluggish, slow.
the other world.
Oh my god, Lord Zed has access to the other world of Silent Hill? No wonder he looks so freakishly awesome! Though he must have hired an interior decorator or something at some point. This version of the other world looks pretty well lit and even has some decent foliage. Ladies and gentlemen and others, welcome to Season 2 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Mighty Morphin
Originally, I was only going to
Rangers.
re-record the first season video and leave it at that. However, I've decided,
That
screw
shake
it.
is
I made
so
a few
fake.
other mistakes and omissions and crap like that, so I'll just play it by ear. The season begins with a three-parter, originally aired in prime time no less, which has the main characters participating in
Ooh,
a
the
dirt
pink-
bike race for charity. Say, you know what I did in high school? I was on speech team, I was in several musicals, I played violin, but you know what I didn't do? Dirt bike racing! I mean, what the hell is up with Angel
At least he
Grove?
has speech
We frequently
and
see the teenagers
music
doing
or
every
something.
friggin'
In
thing
our
under
school,
the sun,
none of the
and yet
above.
still have free time to work on homework,
Just books.
save the world, and simply hang out at the juice bar. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that they teach their
Oh, our extracurricular activities in school was after school tutor for your classes that you fail. So yeah, that is our beautiful clubs that we could join. None of the above. You can take statistics, calculus, science, history, but that's it. No music, no arts, no honing your skills because that doesn't matter to our school.
own classes at the juice bar, be it martial arts, dance, or gymnastics, and are all working staff on charities. It astounds me that this is the conception of high school life that was presented to us. Nobody could do
Maybe
all
that's
this
why I
stuff
like
just
Power
in their high
Rangers,
school
right?
years. It simply doesn't happen. Anyway, Season 2 is where we're introduced to a new villain to replace Rita. There's only so much leverage you can get out of the same stock footage of these characters deciding to make
Stock
monsters.
footage.
And the instant you see our new villain, you know why people
Oh.
preferred him. This is Lord Zed, Emperor of Evil and
I
Rita's
hated him
boss. You'll
so
recall
much.
that last time Rita was referred to as an Empress of Evil,
Oh.
so I'm not sure how one has a hierarchy when one is supposed to be the supreme ruler. What's even better is that we'll later learn that even Zed has a boss. But just look at this guy. This is what H.R. Giger would have created if he wanted to make a supervillain. Metallic exoskeleton surrounding exposed muscle, a red visor, tubes carrying fluid all over. Clearly he looks like a more serious threat than the sorceress who has the same fashion consultant as Queen Amidala. Plus, you can't fault his logic about why he's taking over again.
Those Power Rangers are nothing but mere infants! You were defeated by children!
As stated before, the show was running out of Sentai footage to use, so while they just started using Zord footage from a different Sentai series, Lord Zed was created purely as an American villain. He brings with him his own army of putties, silver ones with Z emblazoned on their chests. However, that vanity of Zed's is the putties' downfall, since striking that Z will destroy them. While that seems like an obvious weakness, it should be noted that it's not like you can just poke it and take them out. They really have to punch it hard for it to register, reverting them into glowing clay stop motion that flies off into the ether. Gotta love how they clean themselves up after they're destroyed, leaving only the fresh scent of pine. Zed, as punishment for her failure, returns Rita to her space garbage can and tosses her out into the recesses of space, where I'm sure she'll never bother anyone again. Bulk and Skull's next stage of character growth begins here as well. After getting rescued by the Rangers from Zed's putties, they decide they're going to try to figure out who they are under their helmets. I'll get more into that a bit later, but suffice to say, what raises my eyebrow is that for all their talk to the teens about how much they hate goody goods, they loudly proclaim their love and admiration for the Power Rangers. What also indicates a major shift in the season from the previous one is that, for the first time, we see the Rangers without their helmets on, but still in the suits. As a little kid, my jaw dropped seeing them like that. After all, it's
I
taken
don't
them
remember my
61
reaction.
episodes for them to show something like this, though for the life of me I can't figure out why, since they've had the suits before on the show in non-Sentai footage. And just to show the sheer level of seriousness this new situation brings, for the first time since Tommy got his power infusion, we see signs of his powers failing, indicating that the temporary extension he got on the Green Ranger powers is starting to run out. Zed summons a monster called Piranha's Head that freezes the Zords as they're summoned, then takes control of the Dragon Zord and Tyrannosaurus Zord. Zordon explains that the only chance they have is to get new Zords transformed from the old ones. Equipped with the power of thunder, Zordon says, whatever the hell that means.
Power Rangers
What's interesting about this compared to later seasons is that the Rangers aren't actually getting new powers themselves,
without
just
the
new
helmet.
Zords. I'm guessing the reason behind this is twofold. One, it makes it so they don't have to pay extra for new footage like Jew 2 stuff, and two, it allows them to keep the current Ranger suits. The Zord footage came from the Sentai after Jew Rangers, called Die Rangers. And while many have said before that they wished the costumes would have changed, I actually am happier that they kept them. While the Die Ranger suits are pretty awesome looking, they're a radical departure from the design of the Jew Ranger suits. It's likely that Saban wanted to keep the Mighty Morphin brand consistent
They look
for his
so cool, right? With the
Ranger suits. It's likely
helmet. But when they remove it, for some reason, it looked like onesies, which they are. But it's
that
weird.
Saban wanted to keep the Mighty Morphin brand consistent for as long as possible. Power Rangers had become wildly popular, and shaking things up too much, especially for toy sales, could have caused problems. That consistency for over 3 seasons and over 150 episodes is probably why Mighty Morphin has remained the most remembered part of the franchise in pop culture. However, the downside of not using the Die Ranger suits is that it created a bit of an issue for the Sentai footage. See, they hadn't quite run through all of the Jew 2 footage yet, and, well, they already paid for it, so they decided to keep using it. Basically, this meant that Zord footage couldn't show the Jew 2 monsters interacting with the Megazord, and Die Ranger fight scene footage couldn't show the monster interacting with the Rangers in person unless it was American footage. And there are occasional moments, usually only a split second or so, where you can tell in certain shots that something's wrong. Whoops. Anyway, Billy and Trini create a device to jam Piranha's Head's abilities, but Zed sends the Zords back into the Earth in the hopes of destroying them. Fortunately, despite this little stock footage attack, they're able to save the Dragon Zord and use what's left of the old Zords to create the Thunder Zords. Sadly, because of Tommy's lack of power, he can't support a new Zord. This indicates that the Zords themselves are tied into the power of the Rangers, which is something I'll bring up next time.
Which they transform,
as I alluded to last season, the individual Thunder Zords are really not worth mentioning since they never use them on an individual basis, just forming the Megazord.
Oh yeah, I was talking to my mom probably like a week ago, and I don't know how we got into this topic, but she was like, yeah, when you were young, you really like boy toys, like the Power Rangers and such, and I was like, and then she was like concerned that I might be like a tomboy or something, but no, we are not. We just really liked, I guess, guy toys or Power Rangers. So yeah, I came up.
The only exception is the Red Dragon Thunder Zord, which has an alternate human mode that can fight pretty effectively on its own. The Thunder Megazord is pretty cool in its own right too, looking like some kind of big shogun or samurai thing. Anyway, to make a long story short, they decide it's time to can this bitch.
Tommy, can this bitch!
And they defeat it. Lord Zed takes it well.
I didn't fail, you slippery twit! You failed! You all failed! Just like you failed before!
If it seems like I spend a lot of the plot analysis following Tommy, it's only because his character tends to cause the most change in the early seasons. Sure, the one-off episodes develop the characters somewhat, but Tommy losing or gaining his powers tends to be the only story that continually gets brought up and have any impact on the narrative. As such, more and more we see that Tommy's powers are running dry, and Zed makes it a point to try to exhaust the Green Ranger's powers, both to wipe the slate of all of Rita's failures, but also to just reduce the threat of the Rangers. Rangers. A running subplot that really went nowhere is Richie, a new kid in school who basically exists to give Trini someone to pine over. Well, to be fair, he also existed for another reason I'll get into. Richie is quite possibly the blandest of any character on the show, with the only exception being the occasional one-off character, or some future Rangers I could mention, but at least those future characters actually contributed to the show's plot. Sitting here, having watched every episode he's been in, I cannot recall a single thing Richie actually did besides for stand and smile. Basically, he was eye candy for the female audience, though I can't imagine why they needed him for that, when even Billy has a physique that male models would be jealous over. Once his only role in the narrative is fulfilled, he pretty much disappears, having had no impact on anything. They could have kept him around, made him a love interest, or done anything with him, but nope. Hell, at least Zach's cousin Curtis had a bigger impact on the plot of some episodes, even though he was only in half the episodes Richie was. Farewell, Richie. You're not even mentioned on this season's Wikipedia page.
Oh no.
Back to the Tommy Oliver show featuring the Power Rangers. The subplot of his powers running out comes to a conclusion in Green No More, a two-parter where he finally loses them completely. Zed plans to drain what remains of the Green Ranger powers to fuel a crystal that will power his own gang of Dark Rangers. The Dark Rangers are actually a gang of 5 jackasses from the high school that even Bulk and Skull are afraid of. And this concept really ends up being a big letdown. Sure, in Season 1 we saw putties transformed into evil versions of the Rangers, but the promise of a group of Power Rangers equally as dangerous as the team wouldn't come to true fruition until Power Rangers in Space, but we'll get to that eventually. However, the point I would like to make with this concept is that Zed is thinking more strategically and being a bigger threat. While Rita's mutant rangers were simply putties with some more enhanced abilities, they were pretty easily dispatched. Taking the 5 teenagers with attitude concept and twisting it on its head shows that Zed was truly a match for the team. It's a pity that when you actually see these doofuses in their Dark Rangers costumes, it doesn't invoke horror like looking into a dark mirror, but instead laughter at how ridiculous they are. I mean, just look at these things. It's basically a face mask with a red cloth mouth and eyes glued on. Some of them don't even look like they're on straight. Did they blow the budget designing Lord Zed and didn't have anything left over for these losers? I mean, come on. Give him a spray-painted motorcycle helmet at least. Give me $300 and I could make a more convincing costume. Why even bother putting them in the costumes if you weren't gonna bother with any effort? Meanwhile, Tommy's powers have been completely drained and he stands alone against Zed's monster, which moves at the same pace as a slug, which is why Tommy, of course, can't get away from him. However, Goldar takes over and taunts Tommy a bit with a slideshow, obviously a punishment far worse than losing his powers. He demands that Tommy acknowledge him as his superior, leading to this.
You are out of your mind.
Tommy re-enters Zed's dimension and shatters the crystal, restoring enough of his powers for one last battle and getting the Dark Rangers out of their ridiculous outfits. To make a long and confusingly dumb battle short, they beat the monster, and there's a trite, ludicrous wrap-up with the jackass teens who apparently only needed friends to stop being assholes. Because that makes so much sense, especially when the 5 of them are friends.
I know,
if it
right?
seems like I'm being harsher on this one, it's only because, as a conclusion to the Green Ranger story, it feels very rushed. There was a time
That, and also because we are adults now and then you're watching this or you're making sense of Power Ranger, it's like, huh? I don't know if I think so. I think you grew up watching Power Rangers because why would you end up having a career like this? I don't know. But still, yeah. Now that you're older, when you watch it again, you're like, this doesn't make sense. How did I even like this, right? I mean, I still do, actually.
Ton of build-up throughout the season leading up to this 2-parter that has enough ideas in it to last for a 3 or 4-part story. But instead, it wasn't a satisfying conclusion, especially with the possibility of never seeing Tommy again. Some good follow-up comes in
I
the
think
next
I
episode,
didn't
Missing
like
Green, with Jason
the
lamenting
fact
the
that
fact that if he had gotten the green candle last season, Tommy would still have his powers. Zed, striking inspiration once again, creates candles for the other
we
four
didn't have
Rangers,
the Green
though why he
Ranger.
doesn't make one for Jason escapes me, to drain their powers as well. Of course, this doesn't make any sense given the explanation for how the candle drained Tommy's powers after having touched it and blah blah blah, but it makes for drama. Jason defeats the monster of the day and then saves the other Rangers, and Tommy writes a letter to Jason telling him not to worry about it. While I will say that Tommy's development came at the expense of most of the other Rangers, it did set up an excellent story arc that could keep viewers coming back, and the next stage of that came a couple episodes later, the two-parter White Light. Kimberly gets a letter from Tommy that says he's coming back, having left to go be on his own after having lost his powers, and so everyone's all excited and happy for that. At the same time, Zordon and Alpha mysteriously vacate the command center. In addition, Tommy gets teleported away after taking a swim, with the implication being that Lord Zed is responsible. Zed also begins transforming a statue into his new monster. And because that wasn't enough plot, Rita's trash can lands back on Earth. I guess Zed's got a really bad pitching arm, considering he was trying to send it to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Bulk and Skull find it and take it back to their workshop to try to get it open, hoping that it'll reveal the secrets of the Power Rangers. After getting defeated by the monster, who's also able to split into 3 different beings, Billy locates the secret entrance to a hidden chamber of the command center and discovers that Zordon and Alpha are constructing a new Ranger. He tells the others, and while at first aghast that it was kept from them and they don't know who the new Ranger is, they eventually
Is this a
realize
White
that
Ranger?
they could use the help. So this is why both Richie and Curtis were really invented, candidates for the White Ranger. By introducing other characters that let there actually be a possibility it'd be someone who the audience has seen, but not necessarily Tommy. After all, why give screen time to these guys otherwise? And I've got to admit, when there started to be promotional material about a new White Ranger, I actually thought it'd turn out to be Richie. Richie, not the White Ranger, but a red herring. So Zordon and Alpha bring in the team and show them the White Ranger, who unmasks to reveal Tommy. This is one of the best scenes in the show's history, and while it's very simple, it's handled with the grandiose nature that it deserves. The White Ranger descending like an angel. It's pretty damn cool. Tommy is given a new weapon, the sword Saba, who can even speak to him, and that he'll be piloting the White Tiger Zord. They, of course, make quick work of Zed's monster and put Rita back in her garbage can before she can tell Bulk and Skull who the Power Rangers are. They send her back into space so she'll never be a threat again.
No, he wears
Making
white.
Tommy the White Ranger was once again a stroke of genius for the writers. They could advance his story, make him a permanent part of the cast, and the White Ranger costume, while taken from Die Ranger, looked just similar enough to match the show. Plus, his Zord was from the Sentai that the Thunder Zords were from, so they didn't have to keep relying on the same reused stock footage all the time. And they finally got a shield for him that wasn't made of cheap cloth. A minor note from all of this is that Zed also reveals the nature of the morphing grid a bit more, saying that it's maintained by the balance of good and evil fighting one another, or in particular, he and Zordon. Very Joss Whedon-esque. Sadly, we never see any expansion on this, the morphing grid itself being one of the biggest mysteries in the entirety of the show, since it's mentioned multiple times over the next 20 years, but never explicitly explained what the hell it really is. Zed's explanation is the closest we ever get. Shortly thereafter, a different subplot begins. There's some international peace conference, and they're looking for 3 teenagers with attitude to represent
With attitude.
Angel Grove, I guess, at the conference. The group ponders briefly the all-too-real possibility of what would happen to the team if they were chosen to go to it. In building to that, there's a 3-parter called The Ninja Encounter, centered around 3 new characters, Adam, Aisha, and Rocky. They're from Stone Canyon, the neighboring rival city to Angel Grove, and are going to be facing off in a ninja tournament against 3 arrogant ninjas. However, there's one thing in particular I have to point out, because it's a combination demonstration of something awesome, but also of just how ludicrous this show can get. There is a full 3.5-minute sequence of a baby carriage going down a hill. Bear in mind that the average episode of Power Rangers, counting both theme song and ending theme, lasts about 20 minutes. A good chunk of the episode is devoted to the sequence. And it is one of the most absurd things ever to happen on the show. And yes, that counts the rad bug. First of all, this must be the biggest hill in the country because the stroller goes downhill during the entire 3-minute sequence. Secondly, I don't care how big this hill is, a stroller and the cheap wheels on one simply don't have enough mass or torque to go fast enough that these teens at the peak of physical health can't catch up to it. And even if it somehow did, it goes onto the grass. It would slow it
I
down
know,
immensely.
right?
Speaking of the grass, my next point. The editing on this sequence is
Can
terrible.
someone, and they're on
They
the
don't even
freaking
try to
skates.
speed up the carriage footage to make it look like it's going faster than it is, making it even sillier that nobody can catch up to it. The people of Angel Grove are apparently the dumbest pack of nitwits ever to inhabit a town. People keep jumping out of the way of the carriage, even when everybody's screaming for them to stop the carriage. I could put my foot out in front of it and stop it. What are they afraid of? That the carriage will run them over? Plus, there's the fact that nobody seems willing to try and help except for a bunch of teenagers. Hell, an older couple doesn't even look up when people are jumping all around them. This and the dirt bike charity event at the beginning of the season
Skating on
really
grass.
paint a picture about this city. The teenagers are the only competent people living here. Let's face it, it's a very long time before we finally see a police officer in this town. The military never steps in to fight the monsters. It's expected that the Power Rangers will do it for them, and they're the only ones to help out with
If it was
charity and
real
general
life,
cleanup. My
the-
God, these people deserve to be destroyed by Zed. Oh, and just
the
to top
stroller
off
would
the
have
absurdity, they only
fallen.
finally reach the baby, who's about to go over a hilly cliff, by
Oh,
doing
no.
complicated flips that would more likely just slow them down as get them in close enough. However, there is in fact one good thing about this sequence. When it passes by Bulk and Skull, while Skull reacts with the same stupidity as the rest of the citizens of Angel Grove, Bulk takes one look at the stroller, realizes what's happening, and chases after it. He doesn't say he wants a reward. He doesn't say it to trick someone. He doesn't need to be guilted into it. He sees a child in danger, and he leaps into action. I'll get into that more when we talk about Bulk and Skull for the season, but that is why this sequence is so absurd and yet awesome. Anyway, after the arrogant ninjas are taken down, the 3 new teens get kidnapped by Zed to make them work for him.
I think I
Kind of
remember
an
them.
expansion of his Dark Rangers idea. While they work on escaping, the Rangers fight stock footage. Okay, this 3-parter really drags. Made no better when the team keeps having to be called back and forth trying to rescue the 3. More or less, due to some contrivances, they discover the Rangers' identities, and we learn that Jason, Zach, and Trini are the teenagers selected to go to the peace conference. Although, are you really surprised? The teens are responsible for every public works project in the city.
So that's all it takes to get rid of 3 Power Rangers.
I'm wondering if they even had a choice in the matter, seeing as they're surprised as everyone else when it happens. We're also introduced to Tor, the Shuttle Zord. Tor can protect the Zords and, in a pinch, join with the other Zords to land and crush a monster. I'm dead serious here. Conversely, Zed reveals that he can sometimes one-up the Rangers with the introduction of Serpentera, a gigantic Zord that could devastate an entire planet when fully charged. Its primary weakness was that it apparently only runs on 3 AAA batteries, so its power runs out pretty quickly. In order to make sure that Zed doesn't strike with Serpentera while the 3 are at the peace conference, the Rangers travel to a deserted planet, because as it turns out, Zordon can send them to other planets, to retrieve the Sword of Light, an object that they can use to transfer the powers of the 3 Rangers to Adam, Aisha, and Rocky. Zed travels in Serpentera after them to make sure they can't transfer the powers, though one wonders why he doesn't just use Serpentera to annihilate the Earth in their absence. Still, Serpentera is given a strong introduction here just to show off its
I don't think
destructive
kids question
power.
that,
The
so they
Rangers
didn't think
manage to
about
get the sword just before Zed
doing-
completely annihilates the planet. I'm just saying, sure, you can have your Death Stars or your Unicrons,
Damn.
but the villain of
That
this show
footage
made
is like
his
edited by a
planet-destroying
6-year-old.
weapon a giant dragon. Anywho, the Rangers transfer the 3's powers, and thus we have our first real cast departure with Jason, Zach, and Trini. When I originally made this video, there really wasn't any confirmation about why the 3 left, but now we can confirm that it was indeed over money. Specifically, the main cast was paid pretty poorly. Austin St. John said in an interview that he could have basically worked at McDonald's and gotten the same amount of pay. What's
Oh my
more, the
gosh,
show was
really?
not a union production, and it was felt among some of the cast that since they were pulling very long, hellish hours and not getting paid very well for it, that they should at least have that going for them. Unfortunately, the negotiations did not go well, and they decided to end their contracts. None of the
Oh,
actors were ever upset about having done Power Rangers, but it's still sad that that's why they had to leave. What's worse is
yeah.
that because these contract negotiations were happening in the middle of the season, they hadn't quite filmed sequences with them yet. In fact, all the episodes that feature Rocky, Adam, and Aisha are basically stock footage of Jason, Trini, and Zach, and really
Oh,
bad dubbers. The three new teens, well, they pretty much fill the roles that they replaced. Don't get me wrong, they were good choices. Unlike the guest stars who would either be wooden or overact, these three were very convincing in their parts, though I kinda liked them better when they weren't Rangers. Knowing the identities of the others while still being helpful allowed them to really show their stuff and give credence to the idea that even ordinary people could achieve what the Rangers did. There were some cosmetic differences. For example, Adam wasn't exactly teaching hip-hop keto in his classes. Aisha fills in Trini's role of best friend to Kimberly,
I
and,
feel
well,
like
that's it. Billy had
this is the moment maybe that I stopped liking Power Rangers, or I kind of like slowly fell out of love with Power Rangers. This might be the beginning when the characters change, right? Because I'm always like that. Like I'm somebody who's very invested in stuff, and then when something goes differently to what I initially invested in, I kind of like either like completely dislike it or I don't know. I'm just so weird. So I think this is where it began. And then I started watching Captain Planet maybe after this. It's either I watched no, I think I watched Power Rangers first before I started liking Captain Planet. One of those. So, yeah. Regardless, I don't know what was the next show that I started like getting into. I was young. I was like freaking 7 or 8. I don't know.
developed enough that he didn't need technobabble explained anymore, and Rocky was there. He wasn't bad, I remind you, he was just there. And
It
of
was just
course, there
there.
was the episode where Rocky just wanted to have fun.
Rocky? I really think we need to get back to our map.
Well, then go study then, Brainiac. I'm having fun.
Oh, and there's also this silly thing introduced called jetting, where the Rangers are basically flying. Though I don't see the point, since they can teleport. It was not a thing that lasted very long, and the only thing to really come from this is an amusing Bulk and Skull bit where they try to build jetpacks to keep up with the Rangers, furthering a point I'll be making soon enough. As time went on, Zed started to resemble Rita more and more in terms of his strategies. Sure, on occasion there was some innovative thinking, like turning the planet back in time to before the teens became Rangers and making them children, but he started making bad jokes and
I
simply
think I
saying
remember
that
that.
he'll get them next time, blaming his minions for the failures of his monsters. Which was sad. Zed was supposed to be the badass villain, and yet he was getting punked by the teenagers on a regular basis. He hadn't had a real victory since the Green Ranger powers were lost. A three-parter, however, came in near the end of the season to shake things up a bit. Rita Repulsa returned once more, but this time she had a real plan. The teens were on a trip to Australia, because they were also filming Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie there, while Zed goes into a deep sleep to rejuvenate himself. Rita lands back on the moon and contacts Finster, getting him to restore her to her proper size. She gives herself a makeover on the pretense of making herself look young again, when really it's just to actually give her an actress for the non-Sentai footage. Alpha, who's conveniently outside for a moment, is attacked by putties and a disc planted inside him to make him evil. And I've got to say, I think I prefer Evil Alpha. He's openly insulting Zordon and cracking jokes. He's just a hoot. I've got to imagine the writers were just having a blast with this episode.
Let's see what a little color will do for you.
This is no time for fun and games, Alpha. Get these flowers off
How
me.
about a little hair?
Obviously, you malfunctioned.
Evil Alpha makes the Rangers teleport to an abandoned theater in Angel Grove, where for some reason their powers will be limited. I don't know, maybe it was built on an ancient Indian burial ground or something. The second phase of Rita's plan is a love potion that she puts into Zed's tubes, making him fall in love with her. Finster, in the meantime, recreates old monsters to send into the theater to attack the Rangers. While the Rangers try to find a way out of the theater, Rita and Zed prepare to get married, with a wedding ceremony quickly put together, much to Goldar's irritation. When the Rangers do finally escape from the theater, they fight some stock footage before Alpha teleports them right back in again. Most of the monsters go to attend the wedding, leaving 2 monsters who are easily defeated with the power of a net. Rita and Zed go off in Serpentera while Goldar leads the remaining monsters in a charge against the escaping Rangers and the command center. After freeing Alpha from his reprogramming, the Rangers bring out their Zords to fight an army of stock footage. This is really a disappointing fight, highlighting the problem of not having the Zord suits. We finally have an all-out brawl against several giant monsters, and it's all clearly from different sources. So the monsters are defeated and Zed and Rita bicker. Now, people have criticized the marriage of Zed and Rita, but I'll give my thoughts on that next time. However, I would like to point out this very fun bit from an episode where Zed wants to make Kimberly his queen. Yeah, I'm not sure whose idea that was either. And Goldar tries to put her under a spell to do such a thing. And whose outfit does she end up in? Rita's, of course. Let's watch the fun.
These clothes are wrinkled! I deserve better! What are you looking at? You should be kneeling to me!
So, yeah, Zed's ideal mate is Rita. Huh. The marriage was done because of complaints the show had received from parents about how frightening Zed was to their children. Then again, he's a villain, so he's supposed to be frightening, so I'm not sure what they were expecting. The rest of the season is multi-parters, so I'll just give my brief thoughts on each. Return of the Green Ranger has the fight that really had to happen at some point. An evil clone of Tommy made into the Green Ranger to fight the White Ranger. What drags it down is that the rest of the Rangers are sent back in time to the late 1700s. It's not particularly convincing. I can't really put my finger on why. There's just this sense of cheapness I get from looking at it. Maybe it's the fake British accents. Maybe it's the Spirit Halloween costume mask for the monster. Maybe it's the friggin' rat costumes. Those rat costumes. Compounding matters is the stock footage of the Dragon Zord, the last time we'll ever see it in action. Though the fights between the Green and White Rangers are fun, the clone of Tommy, after turning good, is left in the 17th century with his powers intact. This could explain a plot hole way later on in Power Rangers Megaforce, but that's neither here nor there, and it really doesn't deserve any real thought anyway. A standalone between the multi-parters is Best Man for the Job. The main plot is pointless, aside from some genuine amusements.
You're useless! Let me handle this before you get hurt!
You right.
Yes, me, you arrogant airhead!
No way.
Typical Tommy blockheaded behavior!
Who's a blockhead? You're out of your mind.
Can't take competition?
Excuse me.
I'm talking to Mr. Runner-Up here.
No, what's actually interesting about this is that maybe it's just my copy, but it looks like they may actually have new original Zord fight footage. I don't know if they're models or suits, but damn, does it look refreshing. Storybook Rangers is a two-parter that really should have just been only one. The only thing that saves it is, of course, Bulk and Skull. Wild West Rangers, however, expanded upon some previously established story ideas. Zed and Rita send a monster back in time to try to annihilate Angel Grove before the Rangers ever came around. Kimberly's teleportation signal gets trapped in the time hole and she gets sent to Angel Grove during the Old West. Naturally, the Rangers' ancestors look exactly like them with similar names. Also, this is in spite of the fact that some of those Rangers came from Stone Canyon and not Angel Grove. Although a nice touch is that the White Stranger that is Tommy's ancestor has a green stripe in his hat. What does stretch the premise thin is Ernie's Juice Saloon. I'm sorry, but a Wild West town would not have a juice saloon. Also, I'm surprised no one accuses Kimberly of being a prostitute given her clothes.
Oh, yeah.
It was a kid show. As established in the first season, the command center has been standing for thousands of years, so Kimberly is able to teleport there and get help. In a nice nod to continuity, Kim establishes that while Rita may have the Green Ranger coin, they still have the other power coins. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Rita and Zed have established in previous episodes that Zordon has created Power Rangers before, and this is such an instance. There have been Power Rangers in the past, and not necessarily the Mighty Morphin team. Especially because, as we really learn next season, they did not create the power coins. They found them. Amusingly, Zordon says this about the pink power coin.
You already have the energy from your pink coin. Too much pink energy is dangerous.
I'll just let that thought simmer. She gives the coins to the ancestors of her friends, which, while I'm sure makes sense to her, makes no sense from an actual logic standpoint. Her friends in the future have studied martial arts because of the people they are and the time period they're from. In the past, the teens are not martial arts experts. And also, the teenagers' great-great-grandparents were Power Rangers too?
With their,
So
like,
yeah, they defeat the baddies, history is flushed down the toilet, and Kim goes back to the future. It's a fun two-parter, even though the space-time continuum just got repeatedly kicked in the groin. The season, however,
got
does
fudged.
not end on a high note. Instead, it's a standalone filler episode where a statue of Billy, made by Billy Love Interest number 17, gets
Oh, I
turned
just
into an
realized.
evil copy.
That's weird.
Subsequently, this is like the 5th or 6th time we've had an evil Billy, usually through mind control. And it's like the 80th time that one of the team has acted strangely, and yet the Rangers don't immediately seize upon the idea of, say, maybe this is part of Rita and Zed's plan. The episode
right.
frankly feels like it's from earlier in the show and really not worthy of ending out the season. Even season 1 ended on something resembling a subplot, Angela and Zach going on a date. Hell, it's a favorite of mine since Zach was my favorite of the originals, and that episode had Tommy let him use his shield. Here, we've got a statue of Billy accidentally commissioned by Bulk and Skull since they wanted one exemplifying the Rangers, and one-off love interest lady made it. Speaking of the true heroes of the franchise, Bulk and Skull's subplot about finding the Rangers' true identities grows them in a rather subtle manner. In the first season, well, they were idiots through and through. They could barely read, they got detention constantly, but then again, Angel Grove High is some sort of totalitarian state where getting bad grades somehow lands you detention, and I'm being dead serious here. And they'd constantly find ways to make complete asses of themselves, even if they were entertaining ones. Whereas here, while their bumbling nature remains, a good chunk of the plans they come up with to find the true identities of the Rangers are actually pretty damn clever. It's basic forensic science. They get footprints. They get recordings of the Rangers' voices. They stage attacks. Well, okay, this one's not so clever since they can't duplicate the look of any monsters or the putties, but the fact that they thought of it shows some higher level thinking. Hell, while most episodes it's Bulk who comes up with a plan to find the Rangers, there's one episode where Skull has actually done research and correlated the data to figure out who would be a Ranger. Mind you, this leads them to the incorrect conclusion of Ernie being a Ranger, but it shows them going above and beyond the call of duty and what was expected of the character's intelligence to solve the mystery. It shows that the two aren't just one big punchline about how being a bully is wrong. The truth is that the two are competent at what they do when they're actually driven to achieve their goals. In fact, some of the time, the reasons their plans fail isn't because the plans are bad, but because the Rangers screw them over. For example, in the aforementioned footprint episode, they managed to get a cement cast of the footprints, but the Rangers make everyone in the juice bar go out onto the dance floor, and a smack by Skull makes Bulk drop the cement block, shattering it. There's also an instance where they found a videotape that was a recording while the Rangers fought in the park, capturing their morphing as well, and while they stupidly don't watch the tape themselves first, the plan is failed because the Rangers, dicks that they are, take the tape away and switch it out. Now, admittedly, yes, they supposedly need to hide their identities, but really, why? Rita and Zed know who they are. And yes, there is a risk of their private lives being screwed over by everyone knowing that, but they're already well-known figures. 3 of them went to a peace conference! But even if they didn't want their identities getting out to the wider world, there's still the issue of simple logic. Bulk and Skull spend pretty much a year on this, and they get really damn close a few times. Eventually, they're gonna find out, whether you like it or not. In some of those cases, they just happened to luck out that they were there when they were going to present their evidence. Otherwise, they would be screwed. In fact, the only reason their determination doesn't eventually get their identities outed is because next season, the two decide to stop trying to find out their identities. Really, they could just reveal to the two who they really are and get them to stop. Now, wouldn't that have been an interesting twist? Instead of them having to figure out who the Rangers are, they instead have to cover for the Rangers, be their secret ally, and take the fall for them. That would present some interesting story opportunities, like the two becoming resentful of the Rangers who get all the success and fame while they have to clean up their messes. Hell, take it a step further with their character development and make the two realize what jerks they've been, that for all their bullying behavior, they've accomplished nothing with their lives, while the goody-goods that they've always insulted ended up becoming superheroes. But still, for what did happen with the two, we got to see some different sides to Bulk and Skull here. Last time I talked about their true nature shining through, that for all the selfish behavior that the two display, they do in fact have aspirations of being good guys. In this season, we see that taken a step further, and two incidents that really made me love these characters. The first was the part I mentioned from that idiotic chase scene for the baby, also them taking care of the baby later due to plot contrivances. The second, well, let me tell you something. Countdown to Destruction is considered by many to be Bulk and Skull's finest moment, but there is a very close second
wonder
for
where
me
they are
that
now.
no one ever seems to bring up. In the episode, When is a Ranger Not a Ranger?, a monster scrambles the memories of the team. Bulk and Skull, during a stakeout in a field, spot the teens teleporting in and morphing, learning their true identities. You can just see the wheels turning in their heads as they realize they've been played all this time. After the monster finishes erasing the Rangers' memories, the two spot prisms that the team plan to use to restore their memories. And for the first time in 2 years and 91 episodes, Bulk and Skull don't run away from a monster, but stand up and face it head on.
Not so fast, buckaroo.
What? Who said that? Who are you? Don't force me to destroy your minds as well.
Draw! You yellow-bellied skunk.
Of course, with a monster that screws with memories, they of course forget who the Power Rangers are, but it was the comic relief duo that saved the day. After all, it's one thing to be brave when you've got powers, good looks, and the uncanny ability to do 15 things at once and be loved by all. But it's an entirely different matter to be the underdog, not the smartest or best in shape, and still stand up to evil. Hot damn, these two rock. While the Trini and Richie subplot went nowhere, Tommy and Kimberly moved closer together and cemented the fact that they were in a relationship. We'd see them frequently going on dates, exercising together, and buying gifts for each other. They really had good chemistry, and I'd like to think that they ended up together, despite some stuff we're going to be seeing in later seasons. Zed had a very different approach to combating the Rangers,
don't remember
and I don't just
anything.
mean the stronger monsters. Zed is continually trying to pull the Rangers apart. Mind control, manipulation to pit them against each other, or at the very least, trying to drain them of their powers. Later, some of his plans revolving around creating his own team of evil Rangers to fight off the team, though that would of course go pretty much unfulfilled, sadly. As time went on, the plans became less elaborate, but still menacing at times. The addition of Serpentera to his arsenal guaranteed a permanent lingering threat, but its lack of power in its energy banks gave it a keen Achilles heel. While Rita's monsters were crafted, Zed's monster style matched his overall strategy when dealing with the Rangers. He would pervert something good or innocent and turn it evil, also investing a personal stake in the Rangers if the transformed object was something that mattered to them. That meant that the Rangers would frequently worry about combating the monster without damaging the thing they cared about. The season also continued the idea of magic versus technology. Frequently, Billy's devices would be implemented in order to fight Zed's spells or the monster's abilities.
I should have known. Science and monsters don't mix.
Zed was obviously a more adept magic user than Rita. While Rita needed to invoke incantations and ceremonies to cast spells or summon some monsters, Zed's spells and powers could be utilized with either a single phrase or just by willing it to happen with his staff. It's easy to see why Rita was easily intimidated by him and was lower in the food chain compared to his power. Also, Rita's plans tended to fall more on the petty side of things. For example, there was an episode where Kimberly was working on a model of a float to promote peace on Earth and all that junk. She sends down a squad of putties to wreck the model of the float so that the real float can't be built. Yes, she sends her stormtroopers down just to make Kimberly feel bad. Zed conversely simply used the teenager's situations to inspire him on new monster designs and how to split the team apart and destroy themselves. He had the goal of conquest and directly saw the Rangers' continued existence as an obstacle to overcome. However, his failure to defeat them was also a constant reminder of Rita. Bear in mind that he disposed of Rita because of her failure, and seeing that he wasn't doing any better must have been quite the blow to his ego. After all, he's the Emperor. He shouldn't have to dirty his own hands in dealing with his enemies. However, as we'll see next season, he would have been a force to be reckoned with if he had ever directly engaged the Rangers. If I could describe this season in a single word, it'd be change. While this season had plenty of filler, the status quo had more of a chance to get shaken up. From the start of the season when Lord Zed arrives, to Tommy becoming the White Ranger, to the power transfer, to Rita's introduction, things were in a state of flux. The show was relying less and less on Sentai footage, but that also meant that they were running out of Sentai footage to use. Change would come even more substantially next season.
That's it. This is good because it reminds me of memories in the past and childhood memories, and also it kind of like challenges me to see if I remember stuff that took place, but most of the time I don't really, so it's kind of like a new experience. Well, thank you for the request, and if you like this video, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.